Eternals is a 2021 American superhero film based on the Marvel comic books race of the same name. Produced by Marvel Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studio Motion Pictures, it is the 26th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The film is directed by Chloé Zhao, who wrote the screenplay with Patrick Burleigh, Ryan Firpo, and Kaz Firpo, and it stars an ensemble cast. In the film, the Eternals, immortal alien beings, emerge from hiding after thousands of years to protect Earth from their ancient counterparts, the Deviants. In April 2018, Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige announced that a film based on the Eternals had begun development, with Ryan and Kaz Firpo hired to write the script in May. Zhao was set to direct the film by late September and was given significant creative freedom within the film, which resulted in filming on location more than previous MCU films. Zhao rewrote the screenplay, to which Burleigh was later reported to have also contributed. Principal photography took place from July 2019 to February 2020 at Pinewood Studios, as well as on location in London and Oxford, England, and in Canary Islands. Eternals premiered in Los Angeles on October 18, 2021, and is released in the United States on November 5th as part of Phase 4 of the MCU. The film grossed $402 million worldwide. It received mixed reviews from critics, who praised its themes, visuals, but criticized the screenplay, pacing, runtime, and character development. The cast includes Gemma Chan as Cersei, an empathetic Eternal with a strong connection to humans and the Earth, who can manipulate and transform matter through physical contact. Cersei has been in love with Icarus for centuries and has a strong connection with Sprite. In present day, she is a museum curator on Earth and dating Dane Whitman. Producer Kevin Feige described Cersei as the leader of the film. Director Chloé Zhao said she and Chang were interested in creating a nuanced female superhero that is rarely seen in the genre. Zhao added that Chan brought a beautiful sense of gentleness, compassion, and vulnerability to the character that would invite viewers to rethink what it means to be heroic. Richard Madden as Icarus, an Eternal who can fly and project cosmic energy beams from his eyes, and is determined to fulfill his purpose. Speaking to the relationship between Icarus and Cersei, Madden said that they have a deep level of romance, and the two are opposing sides of how they connect with the world. Since Cersei has compassion for humans, while Icarus is more disconnected, giving the Eternals long lifespan. Madden worked to find a way to portray Icarus in a way that he would not come across as bored of everything. Zhao's take on Icarus was influenced by director Zack Snyder's interpretation of Superman in Man of Steel 2013, which left a strong impression on her for its authentic and very real-life approach. Kumail Nanjiani as Kingo, an Eternal who can project cosmic energy projectiles from his hands. Enamored with his fame, Kingo becomes a popular Bollywood film star to blend in on Earth. Nanjiani wanted the performance to combine the wisecracking attitude of John McClane from Die Hard film series with the look of a Bollywood actor, Harington Roshan. He studied Errol Flynn films and some of the original Zorro films to prepare for the role. Nanjiani, who is not a dancer, found learning the Bollywood dance scenes highly challenging. Lia McHugh as Sprite, an Eternal who can project lifelike illusions. Sprite has the physical appearance of a young girl, with McHugh calling her an old soul dissatisfied with humanity. Described as the Tinkerbell to Icarus's Peter Pan, McHugh was primarily inspired by Neil Gaiman's 2006 run on the character. Brian Tyree Henry as Phasos, an Eternal and intelligent weapons and technology inventor. He's the first superhero to be depicted as gay in the MCU film series. Laura Ridloff as Makari, an Eternal who can move at superhuman speed. The character is the first deaf superhero in the MCU. After starting to run more in anticipation of the role, she shifted to muscle building in order to have a symmetry of somebody who looks like a sprinter. Barry Keoghan as Druig, an aloof Eternal who becomes frustrated with the inaction of the other Eternals in human affairs. He can manipulate minds of others. Don Lee as Gilgamesh, the strongest Eternal with a deep connection to Athena. Lee pursued the role in order to be an inspiration to younger generation as the first Korean superhero and was able to utilize his boxing training for the role. Kit Harington as Dane Whitman, a human who works at the Natural History Museum in London as a history professor and is dating Cersei. Salma Hayek as Ajax, the wise spiritual leader of the Eternals, who has the ability to heal and is the bridge between the Eternals and the Celestials. Changing the character from a man in the comics allowed Hayek to lean into Ajax's femininity and make her the mother figure of the Eternals. Hayek was initially hesitant to work with Marvel, assuming she would have to have a supporting or a grandmother type role. And Angelina Jolie as Athena, an elite warrior Eternal who can form any weapon out of cosmic energy and develops a close bond with Gilgamesh over the centuries. She also suffers from a psychological condition called Henry. Jolie trained with various swords and spears and staffs for the role, as well as taking ballet lessons. Now, I found this to be a perplexing film and almost a contradiction of itself. On one hand, I found the characters somewhat flat, the acting to be somewhat bland, and the story just somewhat uninteresting. But as the film evolves, it does draw you in somewhat. And it does start to get more and more interesting, and the characters start to fulfill their storylines, as it were. Zhao, who is most famous for, of course, directing the Oscar-winning Nomadland, is an interesting choice to take on an ambitious superhero movie like this. And she does add her finer sort of nuanced directing touches to this film. Though intriguing at times, it also can be occasionally confounding, as the new directions don't always necessarily work within the sort of action-packed grandeur of the MCU movies. The film is beautifully shot, although I do feel the CGI in this one somewhat lets it down, and I found the Deviants to be very, very dull antagonists and very uninteresting. It's an interesting combination here, as the film of course is done in an artful sort of style that of course Zhao is known for, but now of course it's full of superheroes who spend their time thinking and feeling and questioning who they are and what they actually come from. I do feel the narrative struggles to juggle so many mild little subpoints, and maybe it tries too hard to be a more expansive and deep, fulfilling film. I think though where the film really lost me was in the actual characters themselves. I find it so hard to believe and attach myself to characters that are immortal and have so many superpowers. And one way the MCU has really lost me is when it's become now incorporated into the greater universe, when we're talking about gods and almost like mythology-based storylines. I found it very hard to relate to a lot of these characters because, like I said, they are just so all-conquering and powerful. And the film leaves you with questions like, why weren't they around when Thanos caused the snap? Or why didn't they help the Avengers at any time? Yes, I know the storyline is that they can't interfere in anything else except the Deviants. It just seems somewhat implausible that now all of a sudden they care about saving the Earth. The subject matter is divisive, and I can't see how it fits in within the greater Marvel universe. As I said, initially I found the cast to be somewhat bland and uninteresting, but as the film evolves, the actors become more familiar with their roles and sort of bring out more in them. In saying that though, I never really found Gemma Chan terribly convincing here as Cersei, the leader. Richard Madden tries his best, but there's not much to the role. He's basically a complete rip-off of Superman. And I didn't really find Salma Hayek believable in this sort of mother-like figure here. I also couldn't quite understand why an actress of the stature of Angelina Jolie would want to play such a supporting role with a character that really doesn't have much to do. Kumail Nanjiani brings his usual charm and wit to the role, and I can see he really dedicated a lot of time in the gym to make himself physically impressive for this one. And Lia McHugh's character is somewhat irritating here as Sprite, but then again I think she's meant to be. And Kit Harington's character leaves you asking a lot of questions as to where his story might go. Barry Keoghan is an interesting actor and quite hard to interpret, and I found his character to be one of the more interesting characters within the whole film. And Tyree Henry is very good in the role that he plays, and of course it is groundbreaking to have a gay character within the MCU, but I feel that the writers were too reliant on this fact rather than developing the character further. In saying all of that though, the story is somewhat interesting. It does hold your attention. It is though slightly overlong and definitely could have been edited down somewhat, as there are some scenes that really just drag. This is by no means the best MCU film I've ever seen. It's not a bad film, it's entertaining enough, but it really just doesn't really make sense within the whole MCU universe. It's kind of confusing and kind of an outlier within the original story arc. I just don't see how this film will fit into the greater MCU universe, as it were. I think fundamentally what you've got here is a problem with a filmmaker trying to make an art house type of film, but tied down to the constraints of a massive budget and the Marvel Cinematic Universe telling her to make a film that is action-packed and tick all the relevant boxes that is accustomed to a MCU movie experience. What I think though is really at fault is the actual source material. I just don't think the Eternals storyline is a very good storyline, frankly. I find them quite drab and dull characters, and they really are just not that interesting when you compare them to some of the most fantastic superhero characters ever written. This is definitely a forgettable film within the MCU series. In saying all of that though, it's not that I didn't enjoy it, it's not that I found it terrible to watch, it just somewhat left me perplexed. And therefore, the Eternals gets a 6.5 out of 10.